Theory and occupational therapy. The use of theory didn't make much sense to me in occupational therapy school. Theory seemed very disconnected from the reality of actual practice, and I've been kind of on a journey to try and make theory seem more intuitive and natural to use and kind of ground it in reality a bit. I'm essentially trying to create the explanation for theory that I wish I had when I was in OT school. So I'm basically just going to start with some basic ideas. So generally speaking, in order for human beings to understand the world around them, they use religion, art, science, and philosophy. And historically speaking, they kind of emerged in that order, right? Religion first, then art, then science, then finally philosophy. So the first evidence of religion in human beings is thought to be between 45,000 to 200,000 years ago. That evidence was found in Africa, the most substantial of which was found in the Border Cave in South Africa and the Tsodilo Hills in Botswana. I'm probably not pronouncing that right. And speaking of religion, I'm going to use the term religion as an umbrella term that also includes spirituality. Now, the first evidence of art is arguably between 35,000 and 100,000 years ago, and again was found in Africa, specifically African rock art. And a good example is the Blombos caves in South Africa. And for science, the first evidence of that, again, came from Africa, and Egypt specifically around 3000 BCE, and included the decimal numbering system and the application of geometry to practical problems like construction. So you'll think about all the science they probably needed to build the pyramids. And finally, philosophy. First of all, philosophy comes from the Greeks. It's a Greek word that means a lover of wisdom. And so the first evidence of Western philosophy, at least, comes from 600 BCE. And it really marks the beginning of what's considered Western philosophical inquiry. Now, similar to the term theory, so what exactly is philosophy? The best explanation that I could find was from a philosophy professor named Sean Castleberry. He talks about how, science is based on the physical world, on observations. But if it can't be observed, then it can't be discussed with science. For example, questions about the soul, morality, ethics, or just the problems of living, like who should I marry, what career should I choose, what is the meaning of existence, etc. So again, religion, art, science, and philosophy. And again, according to the historical record, they really kind of emerged in that order. There is, of course, a lot of crossover, right? The line between philosophy, religion, art, and science, it can be kind of blurry. And I like this quote by the author Isaac Asimov. He said, there is an art to science and a science and art. The two are not enemies, but different aspects of the whole. And another example would be how, Albert Einstein frequently stated that music, particularly the works of Mozart, significantly inspired him and played a role in the development of his scientific theories, often describing his thought processes as akin to hearing the underlying harmonies of the universe through music. And finally, a quote by the theoretical physicist Max Planck. He said, "It is impossible to make a clear cut between science, religion, and art. The whole is never equal simply to the sum of its various parts." So again, philosophy is considered to be the one that emerged last after science. Kind of a way that the Greeks, I think, addressed how all these different things sort of intersected, right? How they kind of intersected and overlapped is how the Greeks used theater. Specifically the theater of Dionysus in Athens, Greece. The theater of Dionysus in Athens, Greece is considered the world's oldest theater. And I'm just going to kind of go one by one with these, right? So religion. Dionysus was the Greek god of many things, including wine. And they built the theater in honor of their god, Dionysus. Now, art. I think how a theater represents art is kind of obvious, right? All the acting, the storytelling, the scripts, and it's obviously an art form, theater. Science. The Greeks did use science to help build these amphitheaters. specifically for the acoustics of the amphitheater, and then philosophy. So the plays that they specifically put on involved a lot of philosophical ideas like moral dilemmas and societal concerns, etc. Now, regarding the word theater itself, it originates from the Greek word theoria, which means to contemplate or observe. Additionally, the word theory also derives from the Greek word theoria. So now I'm kind of finally at the part of the video where I talk about theory and occupational therapy. Basically, I think similar to the way the Greeks used theater to help them understand the world around them, theory is used by occupational therapists to essentially understand the field of occupational therapy and how to behave as occupational therapists, right? The actors in Greek theater had a script that guided them, right? The same way that theory is supposed to guide us in practice. And much like Greek theater, theory in occupational therapy also touches on religion, art, science, and philosophy. And I would say specifically the one that to me really kind of represents religion or spirituality is the Cmop-e, the Canadian model of occupational performance and engagement. Right there in the center of their model, they've got spiritual. I think the theory in occupational therapy that represents art, I would say, is kind of obviously going to be the Kawa river model, because the model itself is just a drawing of a river with the kind of, the model uses the metaphor of a river to represent a person's life journey, with the water representing life force and the river banks representing personal factors and environment. And for science, I wasn't really totally sure, but to me, the Peop is the one that I thought, the person, environment, occupation, performance model, just because you're kind of observing the person factors, the environment factors, etc. It seems very built on observation, I would say, and evidence. And now finally with philosophy, I was going to say the Moho model, the model of human occupation model, to me seems the most philosophical because of its emphasis on meaning and volition, right? Volition being a person's internal motivation, including their desires, values, and interests that drive their occupational forces. But of course, the Peop model also addresses quite a bit of that as well. So now a question that comes up with these different theories is, which one do we use, right? Do these different theories contradict each other? And I really like what Richard Feynman, a theoretical physicist, said about theories in physics. He said, every theoretical physicist who is any good knows 6 or 7 different theoretical representations for exactly the same physics. He knows that they are all equivalent and that nobody is ever going to be able to decide which one is right at that level, but he keeps them in his head, hoping that they will give him different ideas for guessing. To put it simply, there is not just one theory that encompasses everything. And in fact, in the field of physics, there is no theory of everything. In fact, that's kind of the holy grail of physics, is trying to find this theory of everything. And again, in occupational therapy, we don't have that, right? So we do our best to use these different theories to try and explain sort of the whole picture of a patient or of different types of clinical practice. What Stephen Hawking had to say was, he said, if we do discover a complete theory, it would be the ultimate triumph of human reason, for then we would truly know the mind of God. Now, the idea of a theory of everything is quite an abstract idea, but I would say the most kind of grounded of specifically the occupational therapy theories is the Kawa river model. I think from what I remember in school, the theory that people kind of liked was the Kawa river model, again, because it was so grounded and intuitive. And I think a big reason that made it so grounded and intuitive was because it used what's called narrative reasoning. And Dr. Cheryl Mattingly, who is a anthropology professor at the University of Southern California, she's really the one who kind of introduced the concept of narrative reasoning into occupational therapy practice. Again, she was an anthropologist and she studied occupational therapists and how occupational therapists often use often reason through stories when understanding and treating their clients. And according to Dr. Cheryl Mattingly, she says that narrative reasoning is a central mode of clinical reasoning in occupational therapy. Now, the Kawa River model, I think the way it uses narrative reasoning by employing the metaphor of a river to represent a person's life journey, allowing individuals to describe their personal experiences and challenges through familiar imagery, thereby facilitating a deeper understanding of their life flow and the obstacles hindering it, particularly within the context of their social and environmental factors, essentially using a story-like approach to analyze a person's life circumstances and identify areas for interventions, especially in occupational therapy. Basically, with narrative reasoning, rather than just relying on medical facts and diagnoses, narrative reasoning usually involves thinking in stories to gain deeper insight into a client's situation and guide treatment decisions. Now, a little more evidence that I like to bring up about kind of the power of story and narrative reasoning is this book called The Storytelling Animal by a professor, Jonathan Gottschall. He's a professor at William and Jefferson College in Pennsylvania in the United States. And he basically says that story is the most powerful means of communicating a message. And in fact, instead of saying human beings are Homo sapiens, he would actually say that we are Homo fictus, or fiction man. And he talks about how, for humans, story is like gravity. It's this powerful and all-encompassing force that we hardly even notice because we are so used to it. But gravity is influencing us all the time, and story is too. Most of us think that our time in the provinces of Storyland doesn't shape or change us, but research shows that story shapes humanity at the historical, cultural, and personal levels. Story isn't a frill in human life, something we do just for kicks. Story is a vastly powerful tool. By educating ourselves about story, we can use to learn that power in our own lives. And I think the power of story and the power of reasoning is something that the Greeks really understood, and that was evidenced by their use of theater. And Jonathan Gottschall talks about how stories are fundamentally important to human life as they act as a social glue, helping to bind communities together like the Greeks by providing a shared understanding of values and experiences, essentially serving as a crucial tool for building and maintaining social cohesion. He views storytelling as an innate human trait with deep evolutionary roots that allows us to rehearse life situations, learn morals, and connect with others on a deeper level. And, story I see as just a very powerful tool that you can use as a clinician. What's powerful about story, it has that ability to touch on religion, art, science, and philosophy. And that's something that the Greeks showed us. And that's something that you also see evidence in occupational theories like Moho, Peop, the Cmop-e, and the Kawa river model, right? And by using story, by using those theories, it allows us to create as whole of a picture as possible for a patient and see that patient as a human being in their totality. Well, that's still very much in rough draft form, but hopefully that helped some people and made some sense and gave some people some tools towards a more intuitive and grounded understanding of how to actually use theory in practice.